Coming up on a newscast, South Korea's Air Force scrambles stealth fighters in response to another act of provocation by Pyongyang. The regime flew a large number of warplanes, apparently in protest of Seoul and Washington's decision to extend joint aerial drills. The defense chiefs of South Korea and the U.S. agree on specific categories of extended deterrence cooperation against the regime's evolving military threats. This comes amid rising speculations that Pyongyang could conduct a new test. The nationwide grief still hangs in the air over the Itaewon crowd crush. People continue to visit altars, and President Yoon vows to provide needed care to the bereaved families and the injured. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with our top story. South Korea's Air Force scrambled stealth fighters after an unusually large number of North Korean warplanes were in the air for hours. The regime appears to have carried out such acts in protest of Seoul and Washington's decision to extend large-scale combined aerial drills. Bae Eun-ji starts us off.
South Korea's military said Friday that it detected around 180 tracks of North Korean warplanes for about 4 hours. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., the North's warplanes were seen flying in various areas inland and along the regime's eastern and western coasts. Although they were flying in the North's territory, what was unusual was how many jets were dispatched. In response, South Korea's Air Force also had about 80 of its own F-35A fighters in the air to make sure the North's warplanes didn't cross the border. Seoul's JCS explained that 240 warplanes involved in the aerial military drills with the U.S. are still separately conducting exercises as planned and are maintaining strong readiness. The North's latest activities appear to be a protest against the decision made by South Korea and the U.S. the day before to extend the aerial drills that have been taking place since Monday because of the regime's continued provocations. The Vigilant Storm exercise has been extended by a day and will continue until Saturday. A senior military official from North Korea had warned in a statement that the decision to extend was an enormous mistake that would spark an uncontrollable phase. This also comes less than a day after the North fired yet more missiles and artillery rounds on Thursday night. At around 9:30 p.m. on Thursday, North Korea fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles toward waters off its east coast. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said the missiles flew 490 kilometers at a speed of Mach 6. The military condemned the North and urged it to immediately halt its provocations, saying they pose a serious threat to the peace and security of the Korean Peninsula, as well as the international community. But the North didn't stop there, as it fired about 80 artillery rounds 2 hours later, again toward the East Sea. Seoul's military said the shells landed in the maritime buffer zones, set to ease military tensions by an inter-Korean agreement signed in 2018. Amid heightening tensions starting next Monday, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff plans to hold this year's Taeguk exercise aimed at enhancing operational capability to counter North Korea's various nuclear and missile threats. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Seoul's Unification Ministry strongly condemned North Korea's provocations and called on the regime to return to dialogue. Deputy spokesperson Lee Yo-jung said the North's actions were inhumane considering they came at a time of national mourning in South Korea. She highlighted the current tensions are due to Pyongyang's reckless development of nukes and missiles. Meanwhile, members of the National Defense Committee adopted a resolution condemning the missile launches and urging the regime to halt preparations for what could be its 7th nuclear test. The committee pointed out North Korea has violated UNSC resolutions as well as the 2018 military agreement. Lawmakers also demanded the government quickly establish a powerful security posture against the reclusive regime's threats and spare no effort to bring North back to talks. The Allies strongly warned Pyongyang against conducting any form of nuclear tests. In their annual meeting, the defense chiefs of Seoul and Washington agreed to deploy more nuclear-capable assets to the peninsula as extended deterrence against the regime's nuclear threats. Jung shares with us what was discussed.
Hours after Pyongyang launched yet another round of ballistic missiles, South Korea and the U.S. agreed extended deterrence against the regime's nuclear threats. This could see more nuclear-capable strategic assets deployed in and around the peninsula. South Korean Defense Minister Lee Jong-seop and his U.S. counterpart Lloyd Austin at their annual security consultative meeting held at the Pentagon on Thursday warned North Korea against using any nuclear weapons.
We strongly condemn the DPRK's irresponsible and reckless activities. As we said before, these kinds of activities are destabilizing to the region, potentially. So we call on them to cease that type of activity and to begin to engage in serious dialogue.
He added that any North Korean nuclear attack against the United States or its allies would, quote, result in the end of the Kim regime. Stressing that the alliance with Seoul is ironclad, he said the U.S. will remain fully committed to the defense of South Korea.
Secretary Austin committed to the provision of extended deterrence to the Republic of Korea, leveraging the full range of military capabilities, including not only nuclear and conventional forces and missile defense capabilities, but also advanced non-nuclear capabilities such as space, cyber, and electromagnetic capability.
He also said Pyongyang appears to be ready to conduct a nuclear test, but added it is hard to predict when it might happen. Minister Lee and Secretary Austin, shortly after the meeting, also visited a U.S. Air Base, Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, for a briefing and a tour of nuclear-capable B-1B and B-52 strategic bombers. He said the visit to the base signals that the Allies will react more sternly, which would be diametrically different from previous responses should Pyongyang carry out a nuclear provocation. Also, through increasing the frequency and intensity of strategic asset deployment in and around the Korean peninsula, the U.S. plans on creating an effect that's equivalent to constantly stationing them in South Korea. 엄지영, Arirang News.
National mourning continues for the 6th day since the Itaewon crowd crush occurred. Thousands are making their ways to the joint altars to pay tribute. Our Yoon is standing by one of the facilities set up at Seoul Plaza. Kyungwon, what can you tell us?
Daniel, it's just past 9 p.m., but we're still seeing some people coming in at this late hour. And throughout the day, despite the chilly weather, a lot of people came to pay their respects. The Seoul Plaza is still filled with silence and grief, with mourners coming in for a 5th day to pay their respects to those who died in the deadly crowd crush in Itaewon last Saturday. The memorial has been open since 8 a.m. Each mourner can take one of these flowers and lay it on the altar. And there's a booth where anyone traumatized by the incident can get counseling. A group of 10 to 15 people pay their respects together and observe a moment of silence. And among the things laid on the altar are flowers, letters, and food. President Yoon Sung-yeol also came today for the 5th day in a row. And now the altar has been completely filled with flowers, letters, and food. The mourners are of all ages and nationalities and have included minister-level government officials.
I'm from Pohang and I came here with my mom, and the atmosphere is very down, and I really don't believe that this kind of accident happened in 2022. And I also feel very sad for the victims.
I wrote that I pray they're not hurting and are always smiling peacefully up there.
Our thoughts and our feelings in Thailand are deep sorrow. I can say that on behalf of the Thai government, which I am part of, and on behalf of the Thai people, we hope that Korea, particularly Korean youth, would rise up, would stand up and walk ahead.
Sri Lanka, being a friend of South Korea, we express our deepest condolences to those who have lost their loved ones.
A total of 25 memorial altars have been set up across Seoul and in other regions. These are the official sites run by local governments. But there are also memorial altars set up voluntarily by the people, including in Itaewon, where the accident occurred. In front of Itaewon Station, we see lines of flowers, food, drinks, letters, and more left in remembrance of those who died, mostly young people in their 20s. Thousands of people come and go, and there are no government officials in charge of the site. But things are kept clean thanks to citizens and volunteers who are taking those roles. People have also set up memorial altars on university campuses as well as at the National Assembly. Daniel, all the memorial altars close at 10 p.m. and tomorrow will be the last day that they're open as the week of national mourning ends on Saturday. Daniel?
All right, Kyungin, thank you for being out there for us. We appreciate it. Moving on to other stories now, President Yoon Suk-yeol and the First Lady attended a Buddhist memorial service Friday for victims of the Itaewon crowd crush. Dressed in black, the couple joined hundreds of religious leaders and followers to mourn the 156 lost lives, placed white chrysanthemums on an altar, and pressed their palms together to pay tribute.
국민의 생명과 안전을 책임져야 하는 대통령으로서 너무나 비통하고 죄송한 마음입니다. 슬픔과 아픔이 깊은 만큼 책임 있게 사고를 수습하고 무엇보다 다시는 이러한 비극이 발생하지 않도록 하는 큰 책임이 저와 정부에 있음을 잘 알고 있습니다.
The South Korean leader pledged to take care of the bereaved families and those injured in the accident until they've all been healed. This is the first apology made by Yoon since the tragic incident occurred Saturday night. Among those who died in the Itaewon crush tragedy were 26 foreigners. Families who are already devastated by their loss had to go through a lot more in the process of bringing loved ones back home. Shin Yeon met with a father and he shared his story.
She was young but wise. That's how friends remember Juliana Pak, a 25-year-old who died in the Itaewon tragedy. Juliana came to Korea last year. Friends say she was excited to come to her motherland and start a new life. As a Koryo saram, she's ethnically Korean. For 3 generations, her family have been living in Uzbekistan and Russia. Thanks to her outgoing personality, Juliana soon found a job in Korea as a teacher. She made a lot of friends.
It was really interesting to talk to her. In spite of her early age, she was really high educated person. She could give me the good advice. Sometimes I'm just waiting that I will wake up and, oh, it's a nightmare.
Juliana's family didn't have much time to process their emotions. They needed to bring her body back to Russia so her siblings and sick mother could see her for the last time. The only one who could do this was Juliana's father, Artur Pak. He had come to Korea 2 years before Juliana to earn money. But because he isn't fluent in Korean, he didn't know what his options were. At first, because it costs thousands of dollars, he thought he might not be able to send back his daughter's body at all. So he asked friends for help. Many chipped in, but it wasn't enough. That's when his friends opened a donation page for Juliana on Facebook. Since then, Artur's phone has been ringing non-stop. Total strangers were sending him as much as they could. And so Artur was able to take care of everything.
전원도 보낸 사람들도 있어. 그 사람한테도 아주 고마워요. 그리고 또 50만 한 사람 보냈는데 거기도 고맙죠.
한 분 한 분 다 기억하시는 거네요.
다 사람들 네.
When officials found out what was happening, they too stepped up. A Russian-speaking employee at South Korea's foreign ministry got in touch with the father and helped him with the paperwork needed to claim some $25,000 promised by the government. These funds go to the families of each victim of the Itaewon tragedy, foreign and Korean alike, to pay for funerals and the repatriation of bodies. Thanks to their efforts, Artur had access to this money in less than 24 hours. Juliana's body was transported Friday morning under police escort from a hospital in Gyeonggi-do province 3 hours away to Donghae port on the east coast. Artur rode with us in the van. And at Donghae, he left on a ferry to Vladivostok with his daughter's body. The ferry to Russia takes 17 hours, and it goes only once every Friday. So if it weren't for everyone's help, he would have had to wait another week.
도와준 사람들한테 다 고맙습니다. 도와준 그런 이거 의문의 목표를.
신예은, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, there are those who spin hate about the victims and survivors of the Itaewon crowd crush. There are also those who have been trying to pin the blame on a group of men who they believe instigated the disaster. Experts warn how this can be very harmful. Kim Hyun-sung explains further.
The internet turns ugly into a place of victim blaming and witch hunting after the Itaewon crowd crush. Anonymous comments blame victims and survivors for the disaster. They say they shouldn't have gone to Itaewon to party in the first place. This type of victim blaming can be common after a major accident. A psychology expert tells why this happens so often.
When there's a big disaster like this one, people are interested in the cause. But when there's no one responsible or to blame, people start to feel fear, and to escape that fear, they start baselessly blaming one person. In psychology, we call that kind of behavior a fundamental attribution error.
Viral internet posts also try to pin the blame on a group of men for this disaster. They say 5 or 6 started pushing through the crowd, which is how the accident happened. Hearsay snowballed through social media. But experts say that in a mass crowd situation like this, it's hard to pin the blame on one person or even a few people.
Everyone there was probably in panic, even the expert firefighters and police officers there, because nobody has seen anything like this before. When people are in panic, they can't act rationally.
This isn't the doing of one person. Herd mentality may have caused each and everyone there to push and push, causing some people to trip and some people to be squeezed. It's not right to label one person as responsible.
Victim blaming and fake news can have detrimental effects on the person's psyche. An expert calls it social murder.
When people are blamed for a situation that they have no control over, it makes the person feel helpless. I call this helplessness the mind's cancer. It can even kill someone's mind. So victim blaming is something we should never do.
Internet defamation, libel, fake news, and spreading personal information are all serious offenses that could not only scar people for life, but are also punishable by law. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
The presidents of South Korea and Germany agreed to boost cooperation in areas vital to economic security. They also vowed to work together in the face of growing threats from North Korea. Moon Gun-young tells us more.
Boosting cooperation to promote stable supply chains and energy security topped the agenda as South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol and German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier sat down for their first bilateral summit, which began with a moment of silence for the victims of last Saturday's deadly crowd crush in Seoul. President Yoon referred to Germany as a key economic partner and lauded the expansion of bilateral cooperation to future industries such as hydrogen energy and digitization, with more investment by German firms in South Korea.
저는 유럽 내 보호 무역주의 강화 움직임에 대해서도 우려를 표명하고 EU 핵심 국가인 독일이 우리 기업에 대한 차별적 조치가 없도록 각별히 관심을 기울여 줄 것을 당부했습니다.
With the German president's visit to South Korea coming as North Korea intensifies its weapons test, the concern over the North's nuclear and missile programs were also high on the agenda.
The president and I share the concern over North Korea's recent missile launches. Let me be clear that we cannot accept such tensions. And I believe the responsibility for this situation lies solely with the regime in Pyongyang. I also express my respect for President Yoon's efforts to resume denuclearization talks with North Korea. North Korea must now, as before, make efforts toward irreversible, verifiable, and complete denuclearization, and South Korea and Germany must work together in that regard.
On the war in Ukraine, the presidents of South Korea and Germany vowed to continue their efforts to support peace for the Ukrainian people and their return to daily lives. Mr. Steinmeier thanked South Korea for taking a strong and clear position against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And he also had words of sorrow and support for a nation in mourning.
I would like to express my deepest condolences, both at a personal level and on behalf of the people of Germany, to all those affected by the tragedy last weekend, the families, and I hope all those injured get better soon.
슈타인마이어 대통령님께서 이 자리를 빌려 이태원 참사로 인한 희생자와 유가족에 다시 한번 애도를 표하고 독일 국민의 따뜻한 위로를 전해주신 데 대해 깊이 감사드립니다.
President Steinmeier noted that he hopes President Yoon would accept his invitation to visit Germany next year as the two countries celebrate 140 years of bilateral exchange. 문건영, Arirang News.
Hanwha Aerospace signed an executive contract with Poland to export domestically developed multiple rocket launchers. The latest deal in a growing industry for South Korea is worth more than $3.5 billion. This helps shoot up the country's arms exports this year to an all-time high. Yoon Jung-min has the details.
Having forged an executive contract on Friday worth over $3.5 billion for Poland to buy South Korea's Chunmoo multiple rocket launchers, the country's arms exports this year have reached a record high of $17 billion. That's more than double last year's total, says the Defense Ministry, including other deals with Poland for K-2 tanks, K-9 self-propelled howitzers, and Fa-50 fighters. It's an achievement the government has said was 5 decades in the making, backed by the Yoon administration's economic blueprint for nurturing the defense industry as one of the economy's key growth engines.
The Defense Ministry will ramp up efforts to make defense a national core strategic industry and furthermore a driver of future growth.
The Defense Ministry attributed these achievements to South Korea's capacity to supply custom weapons systems on time, leveraging years of experience gained through joint military exercises with the United States. It added that it hopes to strengthen solidarity with Europe through arms sales in lockstep with stronger security cooperation. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Elsewhere around the world, Russian troops are reportedly getting ready to withdraw from the west bank of the Dnipro River, an area that includes Kherson City, the only major city that's been captured since the start of the invasion. That's according to Reuters, citing a Russian-installed official in the region. Civilians are also evacuating as Ukrainian forces look to retake Kherson City by the end of this year. Moscow had previously denied the withdrawal, with any retreat representing a significant defeat for its forces. Officials in Ukraine, on the other hand, remain cautious, saying it might be a trap. The Korea Football Association has canceled all street cheering events for the 2022 Qatar World Cup. The decision was made to pay respects to the Itaewon crush victims and their families. The KFA will withdraw applications for all Gwanghwamun Square gathering permits later this week. Street cheering began in the nation during the 2002 World Cup. Official events have been co-hosted by the association and Seoul metropolitan government since the 2018 World Cup. The 2022 competition starts on November 20th. The Taeguk Warriors first face Uruguay on the 24th.
Plenty of sunshine will prevail for this weekend, but windy, blustery weather is on tap. The capital region will see morning temperatures starting off at 1 degree Celsius tomorrow. But due to gusty winds, the weather is likely to feel much colder. This autumn cold snap will last until Sunday morning, with temperatures staying below the seasonal norms in Seoul. Although cold air is sweeping across the nation, the air is circulating at a fairly fast rate. Therefore, we'll have no worries about fine dust tomorrow, as clean air will take over. Air quality will stand in the normal to good category nationwide. Sunny skies will dominate nationwide. Seoul will be starting off at 1 degree, and Chuncheon will be especially cold at -3. And wide temperature gaps are expected, so make sure to dress in layers. Highs in Seoul will be reaching 13, Chuncheon 14, and Busan will be topping out at 18 degrees. Until this weekend, dry spells will intensify along with the cold temperatures. Next Monday, the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon province will see brief showers. It's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.